Welcome to the Retail Talk Podcast. My name is Darius Wasafi, and today I am speaking with Alex Yancher, CEO of a company called Passport Global. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Darius. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining the podcast. So, your company is in a very hot space these days, supply chain, tariffs, and all that stuff. So I'm really excited to get into that and learn more about really the details that most of us on the outside probably don't know. So let's start with just a brief background on yourself, and then we'll talk about Passport.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned before we did the podcast, I'm here in San Francisco, beautiful, sometimes sunny San Francisco, not sunny right now. But I grew up in San Francisco. I went to Berkeley, so stayed local pretty much my whole life, except for a 2-year stint in Southern California, in Culver City. I started my career as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley. So did that for a couple of years, and then joined Facebook after that. And at Facebook, I met a friend of mine who became a co-founder for the company that I started previous to Passport called Links, which was like a personal shopping service that helped people abroad buy products from the US. And I ran operations for that company, helped us figure out how to ship items, big or small, cheap, expensive, all over the world, learned all about cross-border e-commerce, all about cross-border logistics, really all of that, and got the insight that there really should be a modern version of DHL that does much more than just the logistics because to do cross-border e-commerce is so much more than just the logistics. You got to do the duty and tax calculation, the regulatory compliance, like all of those types of things. So left Links, start a Passport, and in year 8 now, building Passport.
Wow. So you started like in 2017 timeframe.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, so let's talk about Passport. What is the main services of the company?
So we do basically do things in two groupings. One grouping is a cross-border solution. So we work with brands that do self-fulfillment or 3PLs that service brands, and we'll do everything for that brand and the 3PL as it relates to international. So we'll do the physical shipping. So we have three warehouses in the US, one in LAX, one in ORD, Chicago, and one in New York. We consolidate volume there. So we do that. We compete directly with like a DHL on the shipping side of things. And we'll do everything else that a brand and I guess a 3PL needs in order to have a successful international program. So we'll do the duty and tax calculation, we'll do the localization of their Shopify store, we'll do regulatory compliance. We'll even do returns in spite of ourselves. It's pretty complicated, but we'll even do that. We'll do duty drawback. I mean, like really anything that a brand needs for their global program. So we do that. Okay, and then the other bucket, the other thing that I mentioned is we'll help brands set up local operations in major countries. So we'll help them set up local operations in Canada, UK, Australia, EU, Mexico as well. And for our non-US friends, we'll help them set up operations here in the US. And that becomes their international program, is that local fulfillment methodology. And for that, we do a lot as well. We serve as the brand's importer of record, their merchant of record, and then we do all of the other localization things that I mentioned for cross-border. Well, we do that for, when somebody wants to fulfill locally, we'll localize their experience as well on their site.
So just from my experience on being on the outside, I've worked in e-commerce a lot, but I know there's a lot inside what you explained that I don't know about. That sounds like a lot. How large is your company?
Yeah, so we're over 200 people. We're over $100 million in revenue. So and everything that I'm describing here, it was not like day one, we're going to serve it, going to do all of this. We kind of built it brick by brick, and every year we, come out with more and more features and functionality. And in fact, the in-country piece, we acquired our way into it. We acquired, I'd say, the key player in the market that did this for major accounts, a company called Brand Access. We closed acquisition about a year ago, and that became our solution for this, in-country enablement work that I was describing.
Okay. Yeah, that's smart. I mean, why build it if you can find something that's already somebody's done all the hard work,
Totally.
or at least to that point. So let's talk about the cross-border part first. I mean, I'm sure everybody's on their mind is like tariffs and like they're going up and down. And so give us a overall idea of what's happening with tariffs.
Yeah. So the tariff story, I would say, at least the modern tariff story of the modern era, I would say began in the first Trump administration. And he came in and increased tariffs, but not such a dramatic amount. Maybe net net, when all was said and done, a few percentage points higher than what it had been. And economists had warned when he was putting this in that this was going to cause inflation and all of that. And frankly, it didn't. It barely dented inflation, if really anything at all. We did, of course, have a ton of inflation in the first Trump administration and under Biden, but it was mostly from COVID and all the money printing that we did as part of the COVID response. But that's a different story. So when Trump won again, he had been talking about tariffs throughout his campaign, and he had built up the confidence to implement some pretty high tariffs without risking big, at least in his mind, without necessarily risking a big price increase across the board, and an increase in the inflation rate in the US, which is something obviously this administration cares about, which really most administrations really care about inflation. So he began, and really, I would say the severity, the absolute size of the tariffs became so big that it really was a shock. And I maybe recall on Liberation Day, I think it was April 2nd or something like that, the market really responded negatively, and the market proceeded to fall, 10, 15%, just in a matter of weeks, because we'd never really seen, we're in one big economic experiment here. We'd never seen tariffs go so high. And there was theories that this is temporary, this is just a negotiating tactic. And there might have been a little bit of that, and that certainly is the case. But now, you fast forward a few months, and it's obvious the tariffs are here to stay, and really high elevated tariffs really across the board. Some of our major trading partners like Vietnam, 25% tariff, okay, minimum. And then there's more tariffs on top of that from, the particular commodity that they sell, and other things. China also, mid 20s. And then the surprising thing and the interesting thing to see how this all shakes out is this administration has been using tariffs also as a public policy weapon, trying to push countries using it as a lever to follow our lead on what we want to accomplish around the world. So, for example, India buying Russian oil, we want them to stop it, right? We're in some form or fashion war with Russia, the US is, and the part of the financing of that war is countries like India buying Russian oil. So the administration is using tariffs we're in the e-commerce industry being caught in the middle. There's a lot of our clients manufacture things in India, and they already had a high tariff rate of 25%, and the administration put up another 25% on top of it for a total tariff of 50%. And that's really high. That, frankly speaking, as cheap as it is to manufacture in India, it's frankly very, very high. And now people are, not really sure what they're supposed to do in terms of moving manufacturing. So it's really, really making an impact. Who knows? Who knows what's happening in India and how they're deciding to move forward with their policies. But that's at play. And then there's another thing at play here, which is the courts are challenging the underlying principle under which the IEPA, um, I'm not going to pretend to remember off the top of my head what IEPA stands for, but it's basically emergency economic powers. There's some of those words are in the IEEPA in that, and the courts are challenging whether or not the executive branch ha can use that as a reason to implement such high tariffs without running it by Congress first. Okay, so there's some hope, for those
Yeah.
who don't want tariffs, that it's going to go away. But, Darius, the president has another trick up his sleeve that even if the courts were to knock it down, what the administration is saying is that there's another three reasons that they can give for giving tariffs. And fine, they won't do it under the Economic Powers Act. They're going to do it under another reason, So the administration, to kind of summarize it, the administration is focused on tariffs as a revenue generating source for the US. It's a core piece of the economic puzzle. Okay. Besant, Lutnick, Trump, they've all spoken to the need for us to raise more revenue as a country, given how much we're spending on other things, start to approach balancing the budget. Obviously, not going to happen this year or next year, but just start to kind of make a dent in the deficit. Okay. We're going to be collecting somewhere between 300, 400 billion a year, more than we used to. Okay. So whatever administration starts, like MAGA or not MAGA, Democrat, by the way, Joe Biden did not lower Trump one's tariffs. So the next administration that starts, it's going to be tough for them to lower tariffs because they're going to have a revenue shortfall. So my
Mhm.
prediction is these tariffs, this revenue that we're getting, it's here for the long run. I'm talking like multiple generations, multiple administrations. And tariffs, I would say, are very popular in the US. They at least optically protect US workers. Optically, you could make the argument that they encourage US manufacturing. They don't seem to be raising prices too much. The inflation rate is under control right now, way lower than economists had predicted. So tariffs are here to stay. They're going to be in the 20% ballpark for most countries going forward. There's going to be pockets of exceptions like Canada and Mexico under the US Mexico Canada Free Trade Agreement. And even that I would say is being renegotiated and rethought right now. So even that might not be here for long.
Okay. Do you do you think that, I mean, you answered one of my questions regarding can the next administration come and use the same reverse reasons and lower tariffs, and you answered that, and I do agree. For the government, it's really hard to let go of any income source, taxes or whatever. So that they can, but they probably won't, regardless of who it is. So are you seeing the full effect of the tariffs on prices yet? Are we seeing that yet?
Um, it's an econometric question. And I don't think we have enough data at this point to see the full effect on prices just yet. And the reason we don't is because decision makers at really big um, manufacturers and apparel companies and companies like Nike, Adidas, all that. They obviously saw the writing on the wall. There while there wasn't much warning, there was warning. I mean, like again, the Trump administration talked about this endlessly during their during his bid for president, and he won in November. He only became president in January, so there was time, and they pre-bought a lot of inventory. Okay, so I think we're gonna start running out of that inventory that the buyers bought in, call it February, March of this year. They're gonna start running out of it around right now. And they're definitely gonna run out of it, for peak. And if there is gonna be an impact on prices, it's going to be a little bit muddled around peak because there's just a crazy amount of sales and discounting going on and so there's going to be a lot of noise in the data. I think the cleanest, clearest indicator of the impact on prices from tariffs is going to happen Q1 of 2026. As of right now, the impact on prices is muted. Meaning, yeah, of course, there are like some clients that they're telling us we're raising prices. Okay, we could see it. You could see it in the numbers, and it's obvious. But you know, in the macro data that the CPI data that the Fed uses to make decisions, it's muted. It's not very high. You're starting to see things creep up a little bit, but again, it's hard to really know with 1 month of data or what have you. There's always some lagging uh, uh, data indicator issues. So my prediction is that yes, we will see it. I think it's going to be lower than we think, but it's going to be in like the 1 to 2% on a macro level, which is pretty high, for what we think of as inflation. And we'll see that probably in around Q1 of 2026.
So when you look at the impact of a tariff on different stakeholders in the process, you have the manufacturers, you have the brands, the retailers, the consumers, and I guess people in the middle, like yourself, who facilitate the transactions and everything. Are you seeing that different people or different stakeholders are handling, because this money has to come from somewhere.
Of course.
It's got to come from somewhere. Where do you see the most absorption from your experience so far?
Of course, it's a great question, actually. It's a great question. And it's also, I would say, a statistical econometric question that I think is going to be teased out in the next 6 months to see really what's happening. I'll tell you my conclusion based on anecdotal observations and data. And I would say that roughly speaking, you could take the impact of tariffs and divided by a third. So it's about a third, a third, a third, meaning a third of the impact of the tariff is borne by the foreign seller and manufacturer. And oftentimes, by the way, there's more than just a manufacturer, there's also an agent on behalf of the manufacturer. And between the two of them, these are foreign entities, right? Between the two of them, they're being bullied by American buyers to lower their price. I can't pass all this cost to my consumer. You got a lower price. I'm going to go find a cheaper one. And there's a lot of pressure being put on foreign manufacturers to lower their price. And it is happening. It absolutely 100% is happening. Okay. That's about a third. Okay. The other third is the brand and or the retailer, like a Nike or a Macy's, raising their prices in some form or fashion. That can come in the form of just direct, like this product used to cost me 10, now it costs me 12. I'm going to raise my price by $2. Okay. So it could come in the form of that. It can also come in the form of removing entitlements, like free shipping goes away, you
Mhm.
know, um, insurance starts to be charged in the cart as a separate line item. The return amenity, free returns anytime, 60 days, we'll pay for your shipping, starts to kind of be backtracked a little bit, you know? So it might not make its way in as an obvious price increase. It might make its way in something like that. Oftentimes, another thing that brands do is they peanut butter the increase on the most hard hit products across their whole portfolio. So they make some stuff in the US and they make some stuff in China. They'll raise the US stuff by 1% and they'll raise the China made stuff by 1%, even though the US stuff did not change in cost, but the Chinese stuff increased in cost by 2%. But they'll kind of, you know, so something like that will happen. That's like, but like you said, the money needs to go somewhere. So that's a third, okay? Um, uh, uh, Gets implemented as a price increase. And then another third is just eating the margin. Margins get contracted. And I'll tell you something actually interesting. I was going to make a post about this. You just reminded me of it. Lululemon just released earnings and they talked about this actually. They talked about this actually not in regards to the tariffs, although that's like obviously directly related to this, but they talked about it in terms of the de minimis going away, and they reported it in their income, like in their pre-recorded earnings statement. They reported it as a 1.5 to 2% hit on their gross margin. So you can see they're eating the margin, you know. So that's how it's manifesting itself right now. Without more information, I would say a third, a third, a third is how I would break it down.
Okay, speaking about of de minimis, that is what's the impact of that? Because like $800 to now it's what is it, zero? Or did it come from 800 to zero?
That's
So
right.
everything is supposed to get some form of tariff. And if you look at the volume of imports into the US, now probably different by product categories and countries, but I would assume, I would guess a lot of products actually get fit, in inside that de minimis. What's the impact of that? What are you seeing on how people are going to handle that?
Yeah, it's a good question too. I mean, for the most part, the companies that took advantage of this were like the Temu and Shein low cost Chinese goods, right? There was a portion of e-commerce, call it maybe 10 to 15% of e-commerce, especially in the apparel space. They would move inventory from their point of manufacturing and they would nearshore it. They would put the um, items into a facility in Canada or a facility in Mexico, and then they would, when an order comes in, they would truck it over the border under the 321 de minimis, under $800. So a lot of brands did that. A lot of very famous brands like you probably would have heard of, like Lululemon, the one that I just mentioned. They
Mhm.
did this. Aloe Yoga, they did this. Bomba, so like very big brands would do this. And for them, they're just uh, on par now with the rest of the industry that has to pay tariffs on the items that they import into the US. So basically the same thing that I just mentioned. They have three options, go fight with your supplier to lower the prices, eat the margin, or raise the cost. There's not that much more you can do about it. And we as consumers will probably see it a little bit in the cost, I'd say.
A lot of Amazon sellers also ship directly when a sale is made. So all of those also would get impacted by the de minimis. De minimis.
100%. Yeah. Amazon definitely competed with Temu and Shein in a very similar manner.
So let's talk a little bit about technology now. So what's the role of technology? Is technology helping at all ease some of these impacts or not at all?
100% it is. I mean, the AI boom that we're going through right now and will be for the foreseeable future is deflationary in a lot of ways, meaning that a company has a brand. Let's talk about a retailer or an e-commerce brand. It has multiple parts of its cost structure. We've just been talking about one, the cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold, if tariffs used to be zero, it's X. The tariffs go up to 20%. Now it's 1.2, X, right? That we just talked about it. It's clear. Okay, can't really control it to a certain extent. But there's so much more to a cost structure because a brand's margins, their gross margin is usually very high, actually, like 60%, 70%. But when you look at their net income margin, when all is said and done, it's like 2% or 5%. Oh my God, where's the rest of that 50% cost structure go? Well, it's marketing, it's back office, it's operations, it's all of that, right? And we're living through a time period where you could kind of go through an income statement, everything from marketing to finance to operations can be something in the order of magnitude of 25 to 75% cheaper because you can automate it with software. So what used to take three people to do can take one. The kind of creative work that you would have needed to hire an agency for to do all this creative videos and multiple shoots and hire actors, put in a prompt and you could kind of generate not as good, but maybe good enough for what a brain is trying to do. And some of the stuff that's coming out right now, the deep fake stuff is just really incredible. It really effectively costs zero, incrementally, costs very little. So the entire cost structure for running e-commerce is going down a lot. So while the cost of goods sold is going up by 20%, everything else is going down by 20%. So I think it's actually pretty exciting and maybe fortuitous time to be in e-commerce, where as your costs are going up, on one hand, they actually should be going down. It's a forcing function. If you want to stay afloat, you got to find the cost savings somewhere else. And AI really is a driving force behind that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Even on the AI side, there's a lot of things that companies are doing right now, which we are assuming are going to stay, but we're not so sure yet. For example, customer service, getting rid of humans completely has backfired. I know myself that I'm still not happy with a lot of, like, most of these customer service bots, AI or not, generative AI or not. I still end up yelling at them, so I'm asking for a human.
Human, human.
Yeah, human. So but in general, we are hoping that the trend will continue as far as improvement, but we don't know. And I think you also mentioned the point about your previous company, which was a personal shopping app, and I think that's my company does the same thing right now.
Oh, cool.
And we are, you know, some, believe that with more AI, the value of a human being actually may go up.
That is certainly true. I 100% agree with it. I 100% agree. That often happens, with tools like Excel, for example. If you can only do math as an analyst on paper with a pen, you can only do so much. With Excel and macros and, automations and all that, you can do so much with that and produce really rich, interesting things, which make you as a human much more valuable to the organization. So I 100% agree with that. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, even in our interactions, speaking especially about retail, like in retail interactions, the future of physical retail, how is that gonna, you know, evolve with generative AI, just software, and eventually with robots,
Mm,
Android, like humanoid robots. I mean, all kinds of robots are gonna come in. Right now, they're mostly in the manufacturing and distribution centers. They're gonna start coming into retail stores as
mm,
they get better.
mm,
Um, Even then, I think we might get to a point where I may have two humans in a store and three
mm,
robots.
mm,
And in order to talk to the human,
mm,
you're gonna be a high value customer.
Interesting. Interesting.
Y-
Yeah.
I mean, these are all like questions and hypotheses probably that we don't know yet. We haven't gone to that extent yet with AI. Yeah, so let's talk about your like Passport's own technology capabilities. So I'm sure technology is a key part of your services. How is like this AI revolution changing your tech stack and how your operations evolve?
Yeah. Where to begin, to be honest, Darius? We're I'd say going through a full organizational transformation with AI. I'll give you one example just to illustrate the point, and then I'll give you a couple of more practical examples as it relates to retail and e-commerce. So, but organizationally, we made an announcement a few weeks ago that all of our calls, internal and external, have to be recorded. We have to have one of those, AI bots in there to take transcription of the call. And in the beginning, I was a little bit nervous about it because I thought it might come across like Big Brother, like we were going to mandate every call gets recorded. And then I thought, there's so many positives to it, and the angle of this doesn't have to be a negative Big Brother one, that it actually can come from a place of growth for people and for ourselves as an organization. And there's so much value I get when my calls are transcribed and recorded because, for example, I can be fully present in a conversation and not feel the need to go, oh, Darius, 1 second, and like writing it down. Or even worse, some people just look down, they start doing something, and you're still talking and you're not sure. Like, are you listening to me? Are you distracted with something on your phone? Because I don't see your notebook and I don't really see what you're writing. So it's a little bit, and they go, oh no, no, hold on, I'm just writing some notes. You don't need to do that. There's already a note taker there for you that does probably better note taking than you ever will. Better
Mhm.
handwriting, that's for sure. And will summarize it and, won't miss a beat or anything like that. And you could kind of keep a conversation going, which is amazing. Then there's also analytics that can be run on top of it. So a salesperson, you can say, okay, let's see how you did on that sales call. Did you do good exception handling? Oh, you did. You got an A for that. Did you talk about next steps? Oh, you didn't. Okay, that's a C. Like that's a coaching learning opportunity for a salesperson to know that they always need to end with next steps. Just a few examples here, but it's really like, and for this to really work, I think, is it needs to be top down organizationally, and everybody needs to feel like they're bought in and they understand the reason. So we, explain why every call is going to be recorded, all the benefits, how to get the most out of it. And we're also doing some of that value add analytics on top of those conversations that we're having. And it's just the beginning of it, right? We're just getting started, but I don't think it would have worked, to be honest with you, if it was like some people did it, some people didn't. We didn't really have any like standardizations or rules or whatever. So I think of it as like a system solution that needs to be in place in the company. That's just one example organizationally. But in terms of our product itself, I mean, there's so many different touch points that we have with customers, from everything from the onboarding. Like we onboarded, this has already been a couple of years now, but we onboarded a very big account called Dolls Kill. Okay, Dolls Kill, they make cool, they're cool like fashion brand,
Mhm.
and they have tens of thousands of SKUs, right? And Halloween is a big holiday for them. Christmas is, and they're constantly changing SKUs. They're constantly adding new things. And when you ship something internationally, it needs to have good data because all the governments around the world, they're worried about things like drugs slipping through or underpayment of duties or what have you. And you need to tell the government what's the country of origin, what's the material, what's the product description, all of these things you need to do. But if you're onboarding an account with like thousands of these, it's hard to do it as a human to just go through every individual line. You're gonna have human error. You're gonna miss something. You're gonna misclassify something. So you really need technology. Okay. The technology that's been around is okay, but now with AI, it's surpassed everything that had existed before, and it's just the like basic like LLM. It's incredible actually. Like there used to be companies that we used to use actually that like their whole raison d'etre was to classify things. Like that was their whole thing. And they spent like a decade training and perfecting it and code bases this long. And now just throw it into ChatGPT. It's better than whatever has existed before, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we do that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, how have you integrated the AI capabilities in your teams? So you have software development teams and product teams. Maybe you can tell me more about like how is each one of them expected to use AI now, different AI tools, and how is that working out?
Yeah. So for starters, I don't know if you've read Toby Lutke, the CEO of Shopify. He had an interesting company announcement that he put out about AI. Do you know what I'm referring to, Darius?
Not exactly.
Okay, so I'll tell you and for the audience here, Shopify CEO Toby, this is months ago. He put out a like a flyer for the company about their approach to AI at Shopify, right? And there's a lot of good nuggets in there, but the one nugget that was a really big, good kind of heuristic takeaway for me was he said, the default expectation now at Shopify is that you look to solve things with AI first before you go out and hire somebody. So he's not saying we can never hire anybody at Shopify ever again. That's not the point. The point is look to see, you know, 'cause they're a growing organization, so this is going to come up a lot. Look to see if you can solve your problem with AI first. And we've adopted that mantra as well. I think it's a very strong heuristic. I think it's a very strong um, stopping point for a person, a manager, to address wherever they're feeling like seams are breaking, to really consider the product suite that's out there. It doesn't need to be something we internally build, but really consider where the opportunities are and see if we can do this with AI. So that's number one. Number two, we have a working group in the company that's going around basically and seeing where the bottlenecks are on the teams, seeing where the wish list is. Like I'll give you a great example. Our onboarding team, non-technical, it's a non-technical onboarding team. They told me and the working group, just on our wish list, we'd love to be able to test before a client goes live every single permutation possible. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, of course we test Canada, of course we test UK, but we'd really love to test Singapore, New Zealand, Malaysia, South Africa. Like we want to test all of those countries. They're like long tail countries, and it's too much to ask an onboarding person to start testing Zimbabwe. Do you know what I mean? But I gotta tell you, sometimes Zimbabwe causes us problems. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
maybe it's 9 months in and there's a package stuck and it's like, aha, it's because we didn't configure it the right way and something weird is happening in the cart when somebody from Zimbabwe puts in their address, it's just like not rendering the right way. And this would have been caught in QA, but it's just not realistic for a human to go through every single permutation. Oh, also there's like expensive, like big carts. Like sometimes things break when the cart is over $1,000. Okay, fine. That's like 99.9% of the time, there's no card that's $1,000. But the point one time there is, and we're $100 million plus revenue business. We have tens of thousands of transactions a day. We're at the point we've shipped, I want to say like 500 million plus packages around the world every year. It's going to be a billion next year. Yeah, even the 0.1%, it's impacting a lot of packages. And there's so many of these permutations where this one is point 0.1, this one is point 0.1, and we just don't have the manpower to test every single thing. So they're say, my wish list is that I'm going to give you every single permutation. That's easy. I could tell you every country. I could tell you that right now. I could tell you like every permutation, low value goods, high value goods, what's in the cart, discount codes, like so many different permutations. And I want AI to test everything. Like don't cut any corners. Test every single permutation, and I want you to catch wherever things break. And that's something beautiful. That I think, we're starting to put these things together, and it's going to create such a great experience for customers. And that's what our team is like,
Yeah,
getting us to do.
that is beautiful. Finding problems before they actually become problems
Exactly.
is a
Exactly.
good goal.
Exactly.
Um, do you have we have quite a few like product managers listening as our audience, and do you actually have product managers in the company?
We do. We do. We have project managers and we have product managers. We have both.
Product. Yeah. So
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit more about maybe on that side. Do you find that are you do you need less product managers now with AI, or do you think you'll need more?
It's a good question. I would say in the AIification of a company, us, you need more because there's so much to do. Really, I think that where I'm more afraid of is that we're going to lose focus and we're going to try to do too much AIification, and we're going to have a lot of failures because there hasn't been enough executive oversight, or we're kind of trying to run through too many projects. And I'm actually trying to get us to focus on like the most mission critical ones, and then let's finish those, and then let's move on to the next one because like there's no shortage of ideas here. And the limiting factor is probably that, like product managing the AIification and the products that need to go through this transformation. Once something is AIified, I can see one product manager being able to oversee more than what they are able to oversee today. So if a product manager today can oversee three features, one key product, something like that, I'd say six features, two products. It's like they get more, they're going to get more scale for themselves, more leverage. So in a way, less product managers needed.
Okay, yeah, and my pet peeve is that that's not something a product manager should do anyway, is track things after launch. That should all be software. It should all be automated,
I agree.
ongoing all the time, and just that's a waste of time for true product managers. So I'm actually happy that we're taking that outside of the PM role, hopefully more and more, and let them work on growth, ideas, new products, new opportunities. That's really
Mhm.
the true job of a product manager for me is an opportunity hunter.
I totally agree.
So yeah, okay, good. So that sounds like you're also innovating on that. And quick question, can a D2C brand right now really ignore the international market for their long-term growth?
I don't think so, Darius. I think that the reality is every single brand, D2C or otherwise, is already international. So there is no version of I'm just US based. And the reason is the internet is international and top of funnel for any brand is already international. So where are brands getting traffic from? Google, Instagram, their website.com, TikTok, etc. All of these platforms are already international. The key question is, to what extent does the brand want to monetize that traffic and the attention that they're already getting? And I think it's fair to say for a brand, we're not ready to monetize it. We're going to ignore it. I think that that's fine. That's a reasonable approach. And when they're ready for it, they could set up and they could try to go get it. But they should know that people from all over the world are already engaging with their brain in some form or fashion day one.
And how would a brand or retailer, what are the like maybe top three questions they should ask when they are trying to select a service like Passport?
Yeah. Um, so there's a few things that we provide to brands and that our competitive base does as well. And then there's like one thing that, to my knowledge, really we're unique in that. And I think for big brands, so talking about like brands that do call it at least 20 million in revenue and up. Let's start with that side of it. For brands that do 20 million and up, they should have an eye towards local fulfillment at some point because that's a huge accelerant and it really transforms the value prop and the cost structure for a brand to be able to fulfill orders locally in Canada, in UK, in EU, etc., versus shipping it cross border. You really change the game for yourself when you do that. And to my knowledge, we're the only player in the market that will serve you both on the cross-border side of things, the crawl, walk portion of it, and then the run portion of it as well. And I think that there's something special about that because brands will maybe do some countries cross-border, and then the countries where they're a breakout success, they'll want to do in country. And it's nice to be able to have a partner that can do both for you and knows your product, knows the data behind it, knows your systems, and can make it a totally seamless and the regulatory requirements and can make it a totally seamless approach. On each individual one, you could ask separate questions. One is, I would say, do you have experience with my product? Do you know how to handle nutraceuticals, for example? Because different categories have different requirements around the world in terms of the compliance. And I've heard brands get burned by that, where they engage with a company that doesn't really know what they're doing. They've done maybe some apparel, but they've never done an ingestible product, or they've never done cosmetics, which is also a regulated, scrutinized product category. And at best, it just slows them down. And at worst, it really ruins their reputation in the market where things need to be recalled, things get stuck at customs, right? And it ends up costing brands a lot of money and a lot of issues. So that's one big thing, just experience with a particular product. I would also say experience with the fiscal compliance as well. So knowing how to handle VAT registrations and duty and tax compliance, all of that I think is really critical. And then just the basics. Do you work with my 3PL? Do you work with the company that I use to print my labels if you're self-fulfilled, just to make sure that you're not getting stuck even at that implementation stage? Like you go through all this work only to find out that there's just like no way for me to work with you because you don't work with the 3PL that I work with. So those are some key things I would look out for if I were a brand.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, there is probably a million other questions I have, but we don't have time for it. This is a very important and fascinating industry. I really appreciate your time, Alex, giving us more information and telling us about Passport.
You got it, Darius. Thank you for having me.